Hello, I'm Aaron Justin Bryan from Table Knights Entertainment, and welcome to Talk 20 to Me. Tonight's subject, the subject of narrative campaigns versus combat campaigns, and how they differ and why both aren't, bad in any particular way. First off, because I remembered this time, don't forget to donate to Child's Play. And past Aaron, if you forget again, I'll come back there and I'll kick you in the nards, dick. Think of the children. Anyways, moving right along. Narrative versus combat campaigns. Let's define what this actually is first. Douglas, go ahead and take a stab at it.
Sure. You see, in many cases, in many games, there are always two major plots the game can either narrative or combat. Two great examples are any game created by Telltales, and then your typical, standard Call of Duty. One being
Those are
combat-based.
extremes of either side, though.
Exactly. And, I mean, that's why I want to open up with the extremes. So you can, for those of you who've played them, then you obviously understand how it goes. For those of you who don't know, Telltale's their way of making video games is very story based. It's on your choices, and your choices actually develop how the story progresses and how it goes. Well, in Call of Duty, it's always shoot, and then the story progresses once you've killed all the bad guys. Now, how this translates to D&D is a bit more interesting in that aspect, because you're going to have to mix both of them up, but what makes a narrative campaign more interesting than a combat-based campaign is it's really in the style of role-playing. Role-playing is what makes a narrative campaign much more interesting and much more Googling. But if you're looking at a combat-based campaign, it's usually always fighting, and little to no rest. Which, again, it's fine. It obviously depends on your preference on how you want to go about it. But, there's so much more that can be brought into in depth. And, you guys explain more on that. And
Christy.
So narrative campaigns versus combat campaigns. Narrative is definitely where the DM takes the time out to write a story. It could be either very linear, where they'll decide where most characters will go, but it will also be heavily based on puzzles and things that they'd have to figure out. But a combat campaign is more often than not, from what I can tell, a very loose campaign where nothing is really planned. Almost everything is improvised, and it's mostly go and fight this thing and get stronger. Go and fight that thing and get stronger.
Alexia.
Is that me?
Yes.
Okay. And this is largely, I'm a little biased when I say what I'm going to say. I think when approaching role-playing games, particularly tabletop, traditional role-playing games, I like to play systems. I like to focus on the storytelling aspect of things because it is a format of storytelling. And I think that a rule system should only exist as a set of rules for the characters to exist in this world through. Something that you can tell this narrative, but the narrative is limited by this rule set, and you can construct different aspects of the world through that rule set. For example, if I'm a magic user, I typically pick spells not that I think are going to make my character super awesome, but spells that I think my character would think are useful or cool. That's personally how I like to play. I haven't encountered a system that had fun enough mechanics where I would want to focus on just combat and use story as an excuse for combat. I think that using mechanics to tell a large epic story is a lot cooler.
I actually have encountered a situation where I actually prefer the combat of a system. Although that was partly because the combat was highly narrative. But defending the combat campaigns, I believe it's more of like a tactical kind of feeling for people who like to play combat campaigns. It depends on the system that you're doing, but for me personally, when I enjoy just doing combat related things, it's because I want to think what will give me the greatest advantage and how can I win, the fastest. But between the two, I also prefer narrative campaigns, but that's just because it's what I grew up on. But I don't think either one is bad. A lot of people think that combat campaigns are stupid. And when I say stupid, I don't mean like that the campaign itself is dumb, but that it's for stupid people. Because
I like to hit things and I get the thing.
That's typist, Doug. How dare you?
The
You've hit my trigger warning.
trigger the doo-doo. Oh, I think I just spit. I just spit all over my computer.
But it really just boils down to what your preference of feel is. If you like the tactical, thought-provoking combat more than you like thought-provoking narratives, then you're not a dumb person. You just like one thing more than the other. And so that's why I think that there's disparity between the two. Too many people look at combat campaigns and they just throw it under the bus. It's just a different type of fun, And me saying this, I prefer narrative campaigns, and you guys know that. But there's something to be said for combat campaigns, and I think that if you have the right mechanics, like you can have a lot of fun building min-max characters, which I do that every once in a while, like lonely Saturday afternoon, play around with the system, diddle it a little bit. You guys ever do that at any point? Just diddle a system?
No, but
Try and tickle out the little itty bits.
making it sound really awkward.
That was the point. I tried to fit in as many Italy as I could.
It's just things. I just want to put in my 2 cents, being a neutral party in this kind of thing. I prefer both, at least in my campaign. I generally tend to keep a good balance of role-playing plus combat, just because as much as I love combat, being the fascist warrior arc character that I love, there's always a good element of story that keeps me wanting to come back. It's a good example is God of War. As much as grotesque as it may be, it has an interesting story to it and a nice thing that when you complete all the games, it's like, and that's why
that was just riddled with all sorts of detail, and I completely understand now.
And God of War is a really good example because that's a game that's considered very combat focused.
But it's actually fairly balanced,
Mm-hmm. And it has a huge narrative, story to it. Not to mention the amount of lore that it draws upon. And as you, like in the first game, you start off with this white guy killing things, and you're like, why is he so mad? Did something stick? Somebody stick something
just called him white. Oh my god!
Right? Racist.
Covered in ashes of his family. Okay, you can't help being that white.
Exactly. So you just think he's like really white for some strange reason. Only until you progress through the game, do you actually find out the reason behind him being so white, and then you start to understand who this character is. And that's the kind of thing that I like to put into my campaigns. the fact that there is a narrative behind it. Sure, I mean, there's a lot of combat, but there's a good narrative story that follows that narrative combat. So you feel as if, you're being entertained by both the drama and the action, and that's how I like to, do that. As far as like keeping to one end, I don't. I mean, it's good for some people. I frankly don't like it because if it's too combat orientated, and it's like, can we stop killing already? And then if it's all like drama focused, then it's like another Mass Effect in which I'm like, I have to hear the fucker explain exactly why he loves the color blue and why this has to do with the race of all of his beings. Then I accidentally pressed A again, so I have to hear him talk about it one more time.
I don't think that you run into that problem with tabletop.
Well, no, you don't, unless you meet that random.
Somebody does not enjoy Mass Effect anymore.
Right? But you get where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, I do. In reference to Kratos and his ashes, when you brought up the fact that he was ashy, first thing I thought of was Kratos walking into a ghetto neighborhood and everybody just coming out with lotion. Be like,
he needs some milk.
Technically, he already
This
uses
motherfucker
enough
be
lotion.
ashy. Okay.
Technically, he already uses enough lotion during the mini games.
Oh, you're talking about the fact that he.
Anyway, can we get back to important things?
All the sexual partners that he can have.
Yeah. Can we get more? Can we get back to important things?
Ow.
Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So about.
Go ahead, Chris.
About narrative campaigns, I feel that's the main reason why we want to play things like tabletops. It's because why else would you be picking up this book if you didn't want to be role playing? If you want to go and just combat things, tabletops, I feel that they're not really specifically for that. Of course, there are some games you can play.
War games.
That's exactly how I feel about it.
See, that's the funny thing, though, Chris. You say that, but keep in mind that Dungeons and Dragons originated from chainmail, which was a miniature war game.
No, I understand that, and Warhammer 40K is kind of like chainmail, and it's a specific war game. Like you do nothing but fight, but there's a difference between that and something like Dungeons and Dragons. If you want to role play a war, that's where you pick up those war games. But you're still role playing, and you strategize based on that. But that's a little bit of a role play. When you just go through combat and you don't have any kind of character development, and it completely detracts from being a narrative at all, then it's kind of like, what are you playing? Why don't you just go pick up Warhammer instead of play Dungeons and Dragons? I mean, 40K obviously, because there's a different Warhammer.
Well, yeah,
it's like role playing.
It's a little bit of both.
No, I mean the Warhammer game specifically.
No, I know. I'm just saying
not 40K.
It's a little bit of both. Well, no, they're both war games. It's just that it depends on which edition you're getting.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the same thing for Dungeons and Dragons. It's evolved as a product over time.
Regardless of whatever it is, it still falls under the same basic mechanics. It's just a different way of playing.
I would say that the mechanics have changed drastically from.
Pretty drastically.
It's pretty much a different game at this point.
Sure, Jen.
But Alec, have you ever had you said you didn't have an experience where you actually enjoyed the combat so much?
Well, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy the combat, but it definitely, like, I never had a system where I was like, oh, the combat, like, I want to figure out, like, I want to understand the system inside and out and, like, learn how to be, like, really good at the combat in the same way that I do for like a strategy game or a game that's focused on combat.
Yeah. For me, I feel, and of course this is the same with anything, the balance is key. When people look at, nothing but combat campaigns, again, they call them stupid. And when people who enjoy nothing but combat campaigns look at nothing but narrative campaigns, they say, oh, look, it's the sissies drinking tea around a table.
Yeah, but we've already talked about how many wives we've had and how many of our ex-wives tried to kill us.
Wait, what?
I've been cursed since birth.
Let me tell you about.
Are you talking about your character? I'm confused.
No, that's the
Let me
thing.
tell you.
I'm just advocating on the side of narrative. That's my personal preference.
I understand.
Let me tell you about my character.
If I want to go into a
Every
combat
girl he
game,
falls
I'll
in
pick
love
up a
with
video game.
dies.
Thank you. Just saying.
Yeah. And if you have the right balance between the two, you can sip tea while kicking ass, and that's when you find the real magic.
Or you can kick ass by sipping tea.
I don't. Maybe like you make
magic tea that allows you to shoot fireballs or something. I don't know.
You know what? At this point, let's just kick their ass and then shove tea up it.
Yeah, that'll work.
They're drinking tea while they're having their asses kicked.
Can we not fling tea up people's
Anyway,
faces?
anyway, my personal opinion overall is that narrative is really the only way to go. I mean, of course, there is a balance that is needed with the combat, but even the combat has to tell a narrative in that scenario. Like, you're not just gonna walk up to some guy, start a fight, and then the whole town's fighting, and then all of a sudden, campaign's over, yay.
And
Like,
see,
what?
that's the thing. If you play primarily combat, you can tell stories through your combat, which people, how do you do that? Through a description. Let your DM know you want to accentuate your character through the combat and talk as your character goes through the motions and speak of the ways that he moves his sword, be alive in the combat.
I can see that, yeah.
Not to mention, you can't really say that can't happen because we've all been there with that one random person that's like, all right, you just created your character and let's start role-playing. So you guys are in the tavern. I want to kill people.
Yeah, I think we've all had an experience of murder hobos.
Exactly, and you see, you can't just say that never happens. There's always that one person.
No, it does happen, but I'm just saying there's a reason for that.
I played murder hobos once, and I don't know, it was fun.
Murder hobos?
Yeah, murder hobos. It's Dungeons and Dragons, except no story. You just walk around aimlessly and murder people.
Oh, okay.
Like in Fallout, when you just go on a kill everyone campaign run.
Well, just any Elder Scrolls game.
Oh yeah, well, Bethesda game, you mean?
Yeah, Bethesda.
All right. I feel like we actually covered that topic rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like combat games are a little too one-of, which is why Warhammer 40K is very good because it's kind of like a one-session thing. Or if you don't have enough time, then you can leave it for multiple sessions. But at the same time, it's all about that one war.
I really doubt they finish a battle in one session. That thing is too.
Yeah, usually I hear they finish a battle in one session. Yeah, so.
All right. Closing
if
thoughts.
It's one session, that means they did it the whole day.
Mr. Leon.
Closing statements. Yes. I personally prefer combat just being a means to tell more story. But I think we can all agree that a good balance between the two is a pretty nice way to go.
Madame Lopez.
I agree with Alec. I prefer narrative, and combat is definitely a means to an end for role-playing overall.
and MCMC.
Jesus. Okay.
Oh, I just got
That was intense.
Combat
I don't know what that
or
was about.
narrative. I was just being possessed, you know, typical Douglas. Da 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 da. But narrative and combat go hand in hand, regardless of you know, what you do or what game you're playing. There's always going to be some story elements into it, even if it's just completely combat based. Uh, it's all a matter of how much of the story is being developed within the game itself. You can have a very short story, a very, you know, an interesting story, but as long as there's a, you know, meaningful gameplay to it, or you can have a game just solely based on story and little, you know, action sequences. Uh, as far as D&D goes, it's always recommended you do a little bit of both. That way, you know, you're satisfying both the players intellectually, and you're satisfying that brutish mentality your other players have. You know, because you gotta tickle all their pickles. So, you know, live long and prosper, and make sure you get your players nice and wet.
There's been a lot of talk of tickling things today, and I hope that through all of the sexual innuendo, you've learned something. Which
Yeah.
Should be the
And
Talk
if you
20 to
did
me
it,
logo. I mean motto.
Right? And if you did it, you can go fuck yourself.
no, Doug, no, they should come back next week. That's what they should do, to learn something else.
Yeah,
maybe
they should come back next week when we discuss.
when we discuss bringing to the party how to pick your bad seeds and your good seeds. Sometimes people are not as they seem.
Wait,
Basically, we're going to be discussing the concept of looking at your role players from a D.M.s perspective rather than an in-world perspective. You as the game master, the person who is a referee. So
That's a
please
hefty
join us
topic.
that week, as this is a kind of a sensitive topic, honestly. Like it's difficult for people to deal with, I think. And
right? Are you trying? Are you hiding a dirty secret? Are you trying to seem like you're normal than everyone else? Are
I
you
don't know.
actually a hermaphrodite?
Are you trying to tickle me?
yes, Chris, but that's besides the point. I don't think that's what this is. Anyways, don't forget to donate to Child's Play. And thank you all again for watching. This is Aaron Justin Bryant here with Douglas Conrado, Christopher Lopez, and
Yo.
Alec Leon. And from all of us here at Roll20, excuse me,
Oh.
all of us here at Talk 20 to me, from all of us here at Table Nights Entertainment, I'm just going to
Also-
stab myself in the face. Roll on.
Don't forget
Someone
to
just
shoot
shoot
the child's play.